So we're going to continue our studies, and we're going to move on to the concept of training for strength. Muscular endurance is what I mean by ME, just as a shorthand, and power training. And the first example I'm going to look at, which can be used to develop these concepts, is that of circuit training. And look, it's an incredibly varied, incredibly well utilized form of training, not least in schools, for example. So it's probably something you have some familiarity with. But that being said, I want to introduce you to some key facets of it. Once again, I repeat to you, it's important you experience these things for real, not just hear me talk about them. This image one I've put over here really is not a classic circuit environment, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize that circuits can work in different ways. So I think this is just weight training, resistance training really, but I'm imagining that they're moving round to station to station to station within this environment, and just wanted to emphasize to you that you can structure something like circuit training within this sort of environment if you need to. I guess this image too is a bit more of a classic example of people moving around from station to station to station, but I just wanted to give you that idea. A couple of things that I think are really crucial to nail from the get-go is that this concept, it can be used, or circuits can be used for whole body development. We can see that to some degree in that bottom image. The upper image, you see a lot of upper body work there, but you can see here, this is core work, this is arm work, this I'm not so sure about here, this is whole body work, this looks to be like leg work, again whole body, this looks to be like arm work. I'm sure there's other leg work going on in here. So we can position, and also let me put this in, we can also position our stations accordingly. So one of the things would be a classic example to do is you might do something like one station on core, then you might move on to one station on arms, and then you might move on to, one station on legs, for example, and then of course you loop back. Not that it's to another station, but to another core exercise. So a part for the middle of the body, the core, the stomach, the abs, the transversus, the obliques, etc. And this is a kind of classic example, and the reason we do this is to avoid fatigue. Now remember that fatiguing is a key feature of training, in the sense that if the body is fatiguing, it is more likely to adapt during the rest and recovery periods. But we can't just do core exercise, core exercise, core exercise, core exercise. That would be absolutely beasting people, and probably we'd lose quality as a result of that. I want to really sort of state that this is a highly adaptable form of training. Highly adaptable, and I might even say varied form of training. I mean, there are literally hundreds of different exercises that can be used within a circuit environment, and therefore the targeting for specificity, for individual differences, is very possible. So really nice from our principle of training perspective. So we've got the idea of varying order. The other point I want to make is that it can be technical. Now, it's always technical in the sense that we have to learn the moves correctly, but also just bear in mind that it can include elements of skill. You can include skillful performances within your circuits. You may have even done skill circuits or mixing skill circuits in. Another point I'd like to make is that very often with circuits, you'll tend to find that there is an active recovery. So let's just say in our example number 2 over here, let's just say that we've got something like it's 45 seconds work, and they've got 20 seconds recovery time. So this is work, this is recovery, okay? Well, what you might find is, of course, this person here is going to move on to this station over here. But before she does that, maybe what she has to do, I mean, this space doesn't work on it very well, but maybe she has to do one jogging lap around the hall and then get to there. And that shows that this 20 seconds recovery is actually an active recovery. A couple of other core points. I'd say to you that it's very, very typical for there to be between 8 to 12 stations. 8 to 12 stations. Okay, so in that sense, we've got some variability. Obviously, if we've got more stations, it might mean that the time at the stations is shorter, and that might mean that we're focusing on one of these components of fitness over the others. But let's just also stress that point. If we are working on max strength, for example, what we're going to find here is that the work intervals become shorter. So they're going to become shorter in terms of time, and they're going to become heavier in terms of resistance or intensity. They're going to become heavier. Whereas the muscular endurance ones, of course, you're going to have longer at the stations, and you're going to have lighter, or let's call it lower intensity. lower intensity because you're looking for that endurance. And with the power, or what we might call elastic strength, what you're going to find is you're going to have some kind of moderate time period, but it's going to be explosive. Okay, so it's probably going to involve aspects of plyometrics, medicine balls. I mean, we see that here. I'm not totally sure who this medicine ball is being thrown to. Maybe it's being thrown down here and then bouncing up to this guy. I'm not totally sure that that's what's happening, but something like that. We've got that kind of explosive work. So we've got eccentric followed by concentric contractions, more of which a little bit later. All right, strengths of this model, first of all. We like this model, because this circuit training, because we can train large numbers of people. Okay, and sometimes we also say that we can train large numbers in small spaces. Now, in the environment we've got here, I mean, it's a reasonably sized space, but we've got a lot of people working quite hard with relatively little equipment in that space. So it's kind of really effective from that practical, pragmatic concept. As I said already, it's very varied. Very, very varied. So we can develop almost any movement through circuit training, and that makes it an incredibly varied experience. If we come back to that variation principle of training, it should mean that it shouldn't have to become monotonous and boring within there. A couple of other things that could be considered negatives. Because people are working within a time frame, we sometimes see that technique is lost. Poor technique, and it's really important that we emphasize and guide people. Notice as well that there is one guide here, and this person are all behind his back, so he can't see whether they are doing that technique correctly. So the fact that we've got large numbers is also negative, because if you like, the coach or the trainer can't necessarily see everyone. Good practice for the coach would actually be to stand here, and that would then allow the coach to look at everything in their field of vision. It's kind of an interesting point. And another thing, I mean, this kind of summarizes that. It's what we call decentralized. And what I mean by decentralized is what I've just said. We have a lack of control by the trainer. The trainer gives guidance at the start point, but then really the athletes are on their own. Get on with it. Off you go. Just a couple of final points. We obviously have got the concept of timed laps. And we've also got the concept of fixed load. Okay, so it could be, for example, that this person comes here and they have to do, 20 press-ups, and then they move on to the next one, 20, 20, 20, whatever it happens to be. We've also got something which are called sprint laps, and these are often used in between longer circuits. So you might do, we said over here 45 seconds of work. Well, the second time you go around, you might need to do 20 seconds of work, but it's like a proper kind of blast hardcore, go for it for 20 seconds and then 20 seconds recovery. So we can also use the sprint laps concept as well. But again, I encourage you to have a go at this. I encourage you to practice it with your teacher. Thanks.